Sarah Hendricks was dreaming of drowning when her television turned on by itself. She woke up to static at 3:03 a.m., that familiar hiss filling her bedroom like insects crawling through the walls. The blue-white glow painted shadows across her ceiling, and for 3 full seconds she lay perfectly still, telling herself it was nothing, just the sleep timer malfunctioning again, just the old zenith acting up like it had every right to after 20 years of service. Then she saw the eyes. They appeared in the static like oil rising through water, dozens of them, blinking independently, pupils dilating and contracting with no rhythm she could follow. They weren't arranged in any pattern that suggested a face. They simply floated in the grain, scattered across the screen like stars in a polluted sky. Sarah grabbed the remote, pressed power. The television stayed on. She pressed it again, harder, thumb white against the plastic. Nothing changed. The eyes continued watching, some of them tracking left to right, as though following movement she couldn't see. When she yanked the plug from the wall, the screen finally went dark. But in that last half second before the static died, every eye on the screen had turned to look directly at her. She didn't sleep again that night. The Bangor Police Department received the first call at 9:47 a.m. the next morning. Dispatcher Linda Cortez took the report with the practiced patience of someone who'd heard stranger complaints. Old Man Wheeler claimed his television had developed a mind of its own, showed him things, eyes in the static, always at 3:03 a.m. Linda added it to the file and forgot about it immediately. The second call came 2 hours later, then a third. By noon, 7 people had reported the exact same phenomenon. Same time, same eyes, different televisions, different models, different cable providers. Officer Marcus Webb pulled the reports and spread them across his desk, looking for connections that made sense. Could be some kind of broadcast hijacking, he said to Chief Diane Reeves. Maybe a prank. College kids with too much time and a signal jammer. At 3 in the morning, Reeves leaned against Marcus's desk, arms crossed. What's the range on something like that? Webb didn't have an answer. He didn't have much of anything except a growing pile of complaints from people who all sounded genuinely frightened and a nagging feeling that this wasn't going away on its own. The calls kept coming. By evening, 43 residents had reported the eyes in the static. The local news picked it up, ran a human interest piece about mass hysteria and the power of suggestion. The segment played at 6 o'clock, and the anchor smiled warmly while explaining that sometimes our brains create patterns where none exist, especially in random visual noise. That night at 3:03 a.m., every television in Bangor that was connected to power turned on simultaneously. Thomas and Kelly Brennan woke up to the sound in their living room. Their TV hadn't been turned on in 3 days. They'd been streaming everything through their laptop, trying to save on the electric bill. But now the old Samsung blazed with static, and suspended in that crackling field were eyes by the hundreds. They blinked in perfect unison. Thomas felt his breath catch in his chest. Kelly grabbed his remote so hard her nails drew blood. The eyes weren't human. The proportions were wrong, the space too wide, the shape somehow flattened as though they'd been pressed against the screen from the inside. "Turn it off," Kelly whispered. Thomas tried. The TV ignored every button on the remote, every combination he could think of. When he moved toward the wall socket, the eyes followed his movement, all of them, tracking him with a synchronization that made his skin crawl. He unplugged it anyway. The screen died, but not before he caught something that made him doubt what he'd seen. For just a fraction of a second, beyond the eyes, he thought he glimpsed something moving in the static, something massive, something that the eyes might have belonged to. The Brennans weren't the only ones. By morning, the police station was flooded with calls. Nearly everyone in town had experienced the same 3:03 a.m. event. The pattern was too widespread to explain away, too specific to dismiss as a coincidence. Chief Reeves called an emergency meeting. Webb stood at the front of the room with a map of Bangor pinned to the corkboard, red dots marking every household that had reported the phenomenon. "We're looking at over 300 confirmed incidents," he said, "all at exactly 3:03 a.m. Different neighborhoods, different power grids, different service providers. It doesn't make any sense unless someone's broadcasting a signal strong enough to override everything." "FCC's already sniffing around," Reeves said. "They're sending a team down tomorrow to sweep for unauthorized transmissions. Until then, we tell people to unplug their sets. Simple enough." Webb nodded, but something bothered him. The way people described those eyes, the way they moved. He'd seen the footage from security cameras at the local electronics store, every display model turning on at the same moment, every screen filled with that same static field. In the recording, you could count the eyes. There were exactly 412 of them, arranged in no pattern but perfectly distributed across the screen like seeds in a fruit. That night, Webb stayed up and waited. At 3:02 a.m., he sat in front of his own television, remote in hand, camera phone ready. When the clock struck 3:03, nothing happened. His screen stayed dark. He felt relief wash through him, followed immediately by confusion. His phone buzzed. Text from dispatch. "Your TV too?" He replied, "Mine didn't turn on." 3 dots appeared, then vanished, then appeared again. Finally, "Neither did mine. Only people with TVs already unplugged didn't get it." Webb felt cold spread through his chest. That meant the signal wasn't broadcast. It was something else. Something that needed the television to already have power, to be connected, to be waiting. The first disappearance was reported at 6:14 a.m. Margaret Chen hadn't shown up for her shift at the hospital. She always arrived early, always checked in with the night staff before they left. When she didn't answer her phone, her supervisor called the police. Webb took the call himself, drove to Margaret's apartment in the gray pre-dawn light. The door was locked. He used the key the landlord had provided and stepped into a living room that looked perfectly normal except for one thing. The television was on. Not showing static, not showing eyes, just the default cable menu screen, the cursor blinking patiently over a list of channels. The glow painted the room in shades of blue and white. Webb checked every room, called out Margaret's name, but found nothing. Her purse was by the door. Her keys were on the counter. Her car was in the lot outside. She'd simply vanished. He was about to leave when he noticed something about the television screen. The glass was warm to the touch, not hot, but warmer than it should have been after sitting idle. And when he looked closely, he could see the faintest outline burned into the phosphors. An afterimage so subtle he almost missed it. It looked like static, and suspended in that ghost image, barely visible, were the suggestions of eyes. 3 more people disappeared that day. All of them had reported the 3:03 a.m. phenomenon. All of them were found missing from their homes where the television was on, showing nothing but menus or dead channels. All of the screens carried that same faint afterimage when examined closely enough. By evening, panic had spread through Bangor like wildfire. People were smashing their televisions, throwing them into dumpsters, driving to Portland to stay with relatives. The police station was overwhelmed. The mayor held a press conference where she struggled to answer questions she didn't understand herself. Webb worked through the night, reviewing security footage from around town. What he found made him want to walk away from his desk and never come back. At 3:03 a.m., every camera in the city's traffic monitoring system had rotated. Every single one. They'd turned from their usual positions to point at the same location, a spot in the sky roughly 40 degrees above the northeastern horizon. They'd held that position for exactly 11 seconds, then returned to normal. He pulled footage from store cameras, ATM cameras, doorbell cameras, the same thing. All of them turning to focus on that same point in the sky at the same moment, as though something up there had briefly commanded their attention. And in every single frame, if you looked carefully at the image, you could see static beginning to bleed into the edges, visual noise creeping in from the periphery like a living thing. Webb stood and walked to the window. The night sky above Bangor was clear, stars visible despite the light pollution. He looked northeast, tried to imagine what might be hovering out there beyond human sight. His computer chimed. New security footage, uploaded automatically from the system. He returned to his desk and opened the file. It showed the parking lot outside the police station. Nothing unusual. Empty spaces, a few patrol cars, the glowing of sodium lights. Then, at the bottom of the frame, a flicker. He paused the video, rewound, watched it again. There, for less than a second, the image distorted. Static bled through, and in that static were eyes. So many eyes. They covered the screen from edge to edge, blinking in that horrible synchronization. When the static cleared, one of the patrol cars was gone, simply missing from the frame where it had been sitting idle a moment before. Webb stood so fast his chair rolled backward into the wall. He ran from his office, down the stairs, out into the parking lot. The patrol car was still there, exactly where it had been, exactly where the security footage showed an empty space. He pulled out his phone, brought up the video file again. The car was missing in the footage, present in reality. The mismatch made him dizzy. His phone screen flickered. Static washed across it for a heartbeat, and in that moment he saw them. The eyes, hundreds of them, watching him from the tiny screen. Then they were gone, and he was looking at normal footage again. Webb dropped his phone. It hit the pavement but didn't break. When he picked it up, his hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold it. The eyes weren't just in televisions anymore. They were in every screen, every camera, every device that could capture an image or transmit a signal. And they weren't just watching. They were editing. The emergency meeting happened at midnight. Chief Reeves, Mayor Foster, representatives from the power company and cable providers, everyone who might have an answer. They gathered in the station conference room and spoke in hushed tones about things they didn't want to believe. 7 people missing now, Reeves said. Patterns consistent. They all reported the eyes. They all disappeared from homes with active televisions. Whatever this is, it's escalating. We need to shut down the grid, someone said. Cut power to the whole city. It's the only way to stop it. And cause mass panic? Mayor Foster shook her head. We need to think this through. Webb wasn't listening anymore. He'd pulled up the traffic camera feeds on his laptop, watching the live streams from around the city. Normal views, empty streets, the occasional car passing through intersections. Then, at 12:47 a.m., every camera in the system began to turn. Look at this, he said quietly. The room fell silent. They watched as camera after camera rotated to face that same point in the northeastern sky. This time, they held the position longer. 20 seconds, 30. The feeds began to show static creeping in. Visual noise consuming the images from the edges. At 1 minute and 15 seconds, the cameras returned to their normal positions, but the static didn't entirely clear. It remained visible in the corners of every frame, like something had permanently damaged the sensors. What were they looking at? Someone whispered. Webb had a theory he didn't want to share. Those weren't cameras turning to look at something. They were something looking through the cameras, using them like periscopes to peer into our world from somewhere else. The static wasn't interference, it was the medium itself, the space between signals, and something lived there now. Something that had learned to use our own technology as windows. That night, Webb drove home and destroyed every screen in his apartment. smashed his television with a hammer, threw his phone in the river, snapped his laptop in half. He knew it wouldn't matter. He knew that whatever was watching them had already seen everything it needed to see. At 3:03 a.m., he sat in darkness and waited. His neighbor's television turned on. He could hear it through the wall, that familiar static hiss, then screaming, brief, shortcut, then silence. When morning came, Webb went to the window and looked out at the street. Every house had lights on. Every window glowed, and in each one he could see the blue-white flicker of static. The eyes weren't watching anymore. They were here, broadcasting themselves into every home through every screen, patient and methodical, and impossible to stop. Webb walked back to his living room and sat in the darkness. His television was in pieces on the floor, but he could still see a faint glow coming from the shattered screen. Still that blue-white light. Still that sense of being observed. Outside, the sky had taken on a strange quality, not dark, but not quite right, as though reality itself was starting to show grain, starting to break down into component signals, starting to become static. And in that static, if you looked long enough, you could see them, the eyes, scattered across the sky like stars, blinking in unison, watching a world they'd learned to transmit themselves into, one household at a time. By noon, Bangor was empty. The televisions played to no one. If you made it this far, thank you so much for enjoying my story. Be sure to leave a comment below so I know what you enjoyed about it. I read and respond to all your comments. Also, check out more of this series with the links above or other videos on my channel. And until the next Dark Veil tale, have a frightfully fun day.